I'm going to heaven. And it was the most incredible feeling I've ever had in my life. And all of a sudden, it was as though you're in an elevator and the floor separates and you start falling into total darkness, a darkness darker than I've ever known. And I heard screaming, and I was screaming, and I knew I was in hell. One look, and I breathe. But we had this crab feed on Friday nights, and it was the only time I ever worked was on that night. And so I went in. It was April 6th, and it was a beautiful, beautiful evening. I didn't want to go into the smoky tavern, and it was awful. And the boys were outside playing, and I gave a kiss goodbye, and gave the instructions to the babysitter, and I left. And as I walked in the door of the tavern, it was just packed full of people. It was just so busy. And Don was over on the phone, and he was talking to somebody and leaning over the counter. And I thought, how can you don't need to be talking to me on the phone. This place is so busy right now, But he looked really concerned. And I walked over, Don, what's the matter? And he turned around and he grabbed my arm and started pulling me out the door, saying words I just couldn't even comprehend, that my son Mark had been hit by a car on Roxbury Street. And I knew the cars went really fast on Roxbury Street, and my heart just sank. And we got in the car and we drove to the hospital, and we arrived there just about the time the ambulance came in, and they took Mark's little body out of the ambulance, and the doctors came running out and yelling at me, how did this happen? How did this happen? And I said, I don't know what happened. And they took him in to the hospital and put us in a room and by the door of where they were working on Mark, and I couldn't pray. I had nobody to turn to. I was just so grief-stricken right then, but I didn't even ask God to help Mark or anything, because I didn't believe in God anymore. And so I just was I don't know how to explain what was going on in my mind at the time, but it was awful. And they came out, and this nurse came out and told me that I needed to call a priest. I said, I'm not going to call a priest. Mark doesn't need a priest. He's going to be just fine, And so she left, and the priest came anyway, and started to go in the door. And I grabbed him, and I said, don't go in there. I said, I don't want you getting in their way. Just leave them alone. Let them take care of Mark. And he just pulled away from me and went in, and they shut the door on me. And so I was there and angry that the priest would go in there. So it was getting towards dawn, and I walked down the hall, and there was a big window, and I looked outside and saw cars going down the street, and people were on their way to work, and lights were coming on in houses, and it was just a normal day for them. And I thought, how can this just be a normal day? I mean, don't they know that Mark is here in this hospital dying, and there's little children being born, and it just didn't make sense to me. And I heard these footsteps coming down the hall behind me, and I just shut my eyes, because I just knew what this person was going to say to me, and I didn't want to hear it. And a voice from the doctor told me they were sorry, but they couldn't save Mark. And I just went numb, and they led me into his room, and I bent over to kiss him, and he was so cold. And I took the covers and covered him up, and I said, don't cry, Mark, because Mommy's here. Mommy can fix anything, can't she? But I just kind of collapsed in the chair next to him, and they tried to lead me out of the room, and my legs were like rubber. I could hardly walk, and I don't know. We went home. I couldn't go to our house. We went over to my parents, and everything was just so confusing right then. And I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that Mark was gone, and I didn't know what to do. But I started to get angry. I thought, a lot of times a cover up for pain can be anger, and so I guess that's where I turned. And we went home and saw Mark's things there, and I didn't know what to do. I just sat there, just kind of rocking back and forth, and people came over, and I just don't remember much. I just wanted to be alone. I didn't want Dawn. I didn't want anything or anybody. I just wanted Mark back. And so that was, I just kind of went into a shell, and I wouldn't come out, and I didn't want to leave the house. And day after day, I would just sit there staring out the window and hating this God. I mean, people would all the time say to me, well, he's with Jesus now, or he's in a better place. And I thought, that's no. And these two little nuns came to the door from the Catholic Church up the street, and I opened the door, and they told me how sorry they were, and don't worry, honey, though, he's with Jesus now. And I took this nun and I just shook her, and I said, you're Jesus. What does your Jesus need with my son? And I slammed the door in her face, and just, with anger, just consumed with anger. And I hated the very thought of God. I hated the very thought of God. And that anger is what drove me. And I just, day after day, was just non-existent person. And one day Don came to me and he said, I've made some plans for us to go to some friend's house, and I want you to come. I want you to get it out of the house. And I got really angry. I said, no, I can't face people. I can't smile. I can't talk to people. I don't want to go. And he kept insisting. And so, we kind of got to the door, and I'm still arguing with him. And we got out to the car, and arguing turned to bickering and got more intense and more intense. And so as we were driving down the freeway, I'm just kind of just losing it. And Don said to me, Kat, you have to move on. And it was like I was a can of gasoline, and he just dropped the match in it, because I just went crazy. Move on. I'll never, ever move on. I came across the car just beating on him, and all my anger that I had built up in me, I was taking it out on him. And he's trying to get the car off the road, and he did. And he came across the seat and went like that, and to move me over. And he moved me all right, but I just saw stars, and everything just kind of exploded. And I just kind of slumped down into the seat and said, Don, just take me home. And he did. And he walked into the house and went into the sink, and he was splashing cold water in his face. And I always, when I got in trouble or had issues, I would run. And so I grabbed the car keys, and I snuck out and jumped in the car and started to take off. And Don ran to the door, was screaming at me. He was so angry. And I just squealed out of the driveway and then down the street. And as I was driving on the road, and it was pouring down rain, and I felt this pain inside of me. It was just, I didn't know what on earth could be wrong, but it was just this horrendous pain. And I pulled over and tried to get out of the car, and cars were going by me, splashing with water on me, and it was raining and honking at me, and the pain got so intense. I knew I had to try to get back home. And I don't know how I made it home, but I did. And I was walking up the driveway, and not really even walking, I was crawling, and Don was at the doors. He was just so angry and mad at me, and I tried to get by him, because I knew I had to call an ambulance. I had to get to the hospital. I knew I was that bad. And so he said, well, if you're that bad, he said, I'll take you to the hospital. And we got to the hospital, and they didn't have MRIs or CAT scans at that time. So they could only go by what my blood tests were showing. And that was that, my vital signs were dropping. And this doctor came in, he asked me, I got the bruise on my back, and I didn't want to tell him that Don had hit me. He's not a wife beater, and they didn't know the circumstances. They didn't know, how we were fighting, and I didn't want them to think Don was a wife beater, so I didn't tell them. I said, I don't know. And they said, well, we have to get you into surgery right away. You're losing blood internally, we suspect, and we have to find out why. And so they put me on a gurney and started down the hall. And, I thought, who are these guys? Am I ever going to wake up? Can I trust these doctors? And anytime I'd ever gone to the doctor, I'd always been really careful to check them out. But I didn't know who these people were, and my life was in their hands. I mean, they were going to open me up now, and somehow I was bleeding. And I did think back to the car and the fight we'd had, but I didn't think I could be that bad. But so we went into the surgical room, and as we were starting down the hallway, Don came by and asked, please stop, and they did. And he leaned over and he kissed me on the forehead and said, I love you, Kat. And I thought, love me. I didn't think you even liked me anymore, and so I had that. I clung to that as we went into surgery, and I saw the doctors over me with masks on, and the nurses, and the noise of the surgical room was it was noisy and just a lot of clamoring and going on. And I remember they put the mask over me and things got dark, and which, I knew I would go under, but this wasn't like any other surgery I'd ever had. It just went dark, and I couldn't breathe, and I wanted to scream to them. I thought maybe they did something wrong and they cut off my air supply or something, but I couldn't breathe, and I was panicking. I mean, like you go underwater and you're desperately trying to breathe. Well, I couldn't talk. My arms were strapped down. I couldn't signal anybody that I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And all of a sudden, I felt myself just being pulled through, and it was really quiet all of a sudden. There was no more clamoring of the surgeons of the surgical room. And all of a sudden, I felt like I don't have to breathe anymore. I'm okay. And I felt concerned. I was confused a little, but I was okay. I was peaceful. And it was a dark space. And I started to move into, I guess, a tunnel or a hallway. And I saw down below me, I saw my husband, Don, and my two sons, and they were standing around a lamp pole. Not Mark, my son that died. This was Jesse, my other son, and Chris and Don. And they were around this lamppost, and it was raining, and they were crying because I had died. And I don't know how I knew that, but I did. And I wanted to tell them, no, I'm okay. I'm at peace. I don't know what's going on, but I'm okay. And then I drifted further into the tunnel, and on my left, there were 4 human figures. They were in street clothes, just normal people, and not angels, not medical people. They were just people, and they could have been distant relatives of mine. I don't know who they were. And they looked really concerned, like something really bad was going to happen to me. And so I continued down the hallway, and all of a sudden, this horrendous noise, like nothing I had ever heard before, was kind of just going over me. It just reverberating, this loud, horrendous noise, like a freight train just running right over the top of me. And I felt like a rope pulling through, burning and just burning through me 100 miles an hour, and this horrendous noise. And the thought came to me, there is no God. And then this horrible noise and this pulling through the middle of me, and it all stopped. And I knew at that point, God did exist. I knew it with every fiber of anything I've ever known. And I had this incredible peace that I can't explain. Other people try to explain it too. The Bible calls it the peace that passes all understanding. Yes, maybe that's true, but I sure didn't understand it. I mean, I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew. I mean, I have my hand right here, put it out in front of me. You're not going to convince me that's not my hand. Well, that's how much I knew that God did exist. Something that I had always, I guess, just kind of put by side, but someone that I had hated so desperately after Mark died. I had rejected God. But at that point, it was okay. I mean, I just knew God existed. And I felt this incredible peace. I felt this euphoria, this just something I had never, ever felt before in my life and can't be explained. And then the noise came again, and the horrendous noise and the pulling through the middle of me. And it felt as though maybe God's just pulling all the hatred, all the anger, all the pain in my life threw out of me, and I don't know. But then this noise again, and the pulling through the middle, and again, the thought came to me, there is no heaven. And it just stopped. And all of a sudden, I saw this brilliant light. And I started going towards it, knowing I'm going to heaven. And I was okay to leave my husband, Don. I was okay to leave my sons and go there. I mean, I knew they would be okay, but I knew I'm going to heaven. And it was the most incredible feeling I've ever had in my life. It was just, it was beyond anything I can tell you. I wish I could tell you. And then the noise came again, and the thought came, there is no hell. And all of a sudden, it was as though you're in an elevator and the floor separates and you start falling into total darkness, a darkness darker than I've ever known. And I heard screaming, and I was screaming, and I knew I was in hell, and I knew I deserved to be there. I had blasphemed God. I hated God. I had done everything to separate myself from God. And he fulfilled that wish of mine. And I was separated. I knew that God didn't even know this place existed almost, or I didn't even exist. God couldn't save me because I didn't exist anymore. I was going to fall and burn in this place forever and ever and ever. I couldn't have hit bottom, commit suicide. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything except fall for eternity. And I just, it was beyond anything. I couldn't say it was fearful. It was beyond that. It was just hopelessness, the hopelessness of knowing I would never, ever be able to come back. I was screaming out to God, I believe in you now, God. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. But I knew God didn't hear me. You know, I didn't exist anymore. I knew nobody could save me. My kids, my husband, nobody knew where I was. I was gone. But the screaming out to God, please, God, I believe in you. Please, God, help me. And all of a sudden it just stopped. And I started going backwards, spiraling backwards, back into the tunnel, back through the tunnel to the entrance. And I heard a voice say to me, bring people to me. I believe it was the voice of God. I don't know what else it could have been. And then I felt my spirit, my literal spirit, enter back into my physical body. And at that point, I started coming back through, and I wanted to live. Once my spirit entered back into my body, I felt the will to live enter back into my body. And I wanted to live, and I was excited to live. And I woke up in the surgical room screaming, God's real, God's real, you know, and yes, you're very sick. And I was, I mean, I had tubes coming out of every part of my body, and I was so critical for days and days after that. But I was still screaming to everybody that would come into my room that God's real, God's real. And Don, thank God, he believed me from the very, very beginning. He believed that it was true. And for over 50 years now, I'm still screaming the same thing. I've been what I feel, I guess, an evangelist for the Lord, because he exists, and I believe in him, and I know what's going to happen to those that don't believe in their creator. And you know, it doesn't matter. Some people say you have to believe in Jesus Christ or you can't get into heaven. Well, Jesus Christ is God, you know, personified. So God, the Holy Spirit, all one. You got to believe in God. That's what you got to do. And give your heart to him. Trust him, because your eternity depends on it. I love you, and I hope my message has touched you in some way, that you can be like me, maybe go out, be an evangelist for the Lord, because it's really a matter of life and eternity. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Kat, first of all, thank you. That was, I mean, I don't know if I was off screens, but I got a little emotional in some of those parts. I don't know if you saw this move here, but I try to be subtle. I was like, I don't want to but yeah, that was extremely powerful, and I felt all of that. So I did have some questions that I did have a chance to write down,
Okay.
and I just want to be clear. Uh, the early belief in God, and then the subsequent unbelief in God. There was no catalyst moment. It was just a gradual occurrence.
Pretty much gradual. Yeah. So, it was just a matter of life happening. And then when I rebelled, God couldn't be a part of that because, wasn't a very nice person. and
Yeah.
so, yeah. And then it became a matter of, am I going to be a good girl or a bad girl? And I chose to be a bad girl. So that's what happened.
Absolutely. So what would you say to you or someone like you who is young and or younger and is wrestling with that idea? I mean, essentially that's what you do anyway.
Well, I
It's
tell
that
them the
conversation.
truth. I tell them what happened to me, but
Yeah.
especially, I have grandkids. I have three beautiful granddaughters, and they all love the Lord. But, I wasn't afraid to tell them, our life is just a flicker in compared to eternity, and God needs to be a part of that. And you're going to go through some really tough times in life, and you need Him
Yeah.
by your side. So, those are things I try to get across to younger people because it's so critical. But they're going to run into situations like I did that are push you down so bad. The job
Yeah.
that you had your heart set on and you didn't get it, or your best friend got it, or the horrible things that could happen. Death happens to people that we love,
Yeah.
and horrible illnesses happen to people. And it's all part of life. It's all living in a sinful world. We can't help but be pushed down by it. And
Yeah.
it isn't God testing us. I think God does sometimes test us and all, but I don't blame God for all the horrible things that happen. I believe the
Yeah.
fact that we live in a sinful world. I mean, look
Yeah.
around.
That's true. This is true. That's undeniable. So at one point you seem to have a revelation when you said you've been asking God, you said, God, over this year, if I experience love, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing to some degree. Can you look back over the longer journey and see where you were kind of being led into, yeah,
Yeah, I
or
just
no?
as a child, when I went to church, I remember I had the first communion thing. It was Catholic church then, but I ended up in an evangelical church because I'm on fire for God. But anyway, I remember the bishop taking my face and he said, something special is going to happen to you. And it never left me. I waited and waited, and I didn't think it ever did happen, but I guess this is what it was. I don't know. And then there was a lady that stopped me in church one time and she gave me a rosary and said the same thing to me. And it was like, I'm a little kid. I mean, I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 when that happened. And just a little kid, but it never left me. And my brother and we swear to this. I don't know, we were kids, but we were upstairs in our house. It was a really old house. And we were standing in the hallway and we saw this heart of Jesus come through the window and go out the other window. And we looked at each other and we said, what was that? And I don't know. I think it was a heart of Jesus. And we both will testify to that today. But, it's too weird to tell anybody about it. But those kind of things happened to me all my life. And I don't know. I feel I'm certainly not a special person that God would choose me to do something or go through something. Not. I think at the time we die, we all get the same opportunity that I did we have that one last chance to accept God or not, during the dying process. And that's what I did. I was not dead. I was near death. I had a near death experience. I got as close as I ever want to get till I do go to heaven. But, it was, it was that. And so there's nothing special about me. think I had a heart for the Lord as a little child, and it kind of went away. And then God brought it back in a big way. But there was always.
Yes, yes, in a very big way. Now, I was thinking about the four people, and I've spoken to many NDEs. Of course, I have my own experiences and research and stuff. So I was thinking in terms, I was like, I wonder if those 4 people that she saw were like, it could very well could have been family members or spirit guides. Do you believe that there are beings around us, maybe on the other side or maybe present, that are guiding us along the way?
Well, I don't. And to each person their own belief, your own path for sure. But the Bible does speak that once we die, that's it. So I do believe there are angels, and I believe there are demons on our earth, and I believe those are our guides. So yes, we do have spirit guides, but they are spirits. They're not people. They're not relatives. They're not friends. They're either one or the other, and you need to be careful. The demons they could portray themselves as an angel. So
absolutely. If you can remember, was there still on the spirit or still on the angels for a moment or the 4 beings that you experienced? Were they just light? Were they dressed a certain way, or how did you see them?
Yeah, they were just people. They were normal people you see on the street. And I can't remember. I think there were 2 men and 2 women, just in normal clothes. They were just in normal street clothes and normal people. And I didn't recognize them, which I thought was strange. And we hear people, and I didn't see Mark, my son. He had died. I didn't see him, and that's fine. I don't know that I could have handled that and come back again. I don't think I could have. So I think that was a blessing. I know where Mark is, and I know I'll see him again. And my belief is that we see our children that die before the age of maturity, that we see them at their mature state. So I am very eager to see Mark. I'm so eager.
Yeah, I just did an interview with. Well, I just posted an interview with this beautiful soul who her young brothers died when they were very young. But when she met them, she said they looked like her father when he was they were in their 30s, and they looked, and she was, that was another touching story as well that was told. So I'm in that moment. I'm sorry, do you want to say something, Kat?
No.
Okay.
It's great.
So you're in that moment where you realize God does exist. And and then, like, I have this wrote down. I said, then the next scene or the next movement is toward hell. I mean, it's like it like your hand, but still. And then there was the brilliant light of heaven, and you're thinking, I'm on my way to heaven. What do you think shifted, if anything, that would have you going toward the light, the brilliant light, the light of heaven, to now, on your way to falling into hell?
Yeah. Well, I had not asked God to forgive me, even though I knew he existed then. I was just me at that point, but I knew God did exist. And I was so excited. I had all this peace and euphoria going on, and I was headed towards heaven. I didn't deserve to go to heaven at that point. I had never repented of my sins or asked God to forgive me. And then it was that's where I went, where I had asked to go. I started falling into the hell. And so I think that I don't think I could have done that, going into heaven without having forgiven, at the forgiveness of God, grace of God.
Kat, I think that's what tied it together for me. And because I wrote down in my notes, I said she believed that she deserved to be there. And there was I did an interview with an NDE that was Catholic, and she also went to hell, and it was a type of purgatory. And she started singing a hymn, a Jesus hymn, because it was around Christmas time, and that is what shifted her out of hell into being received. And one of the things she said was so profound that resonated with me when you said deserve to be there. When she came back, she said she experienced it because she felt like that was what she was supposed to experience. And that and it's everyone has their own, as you mentioned, everyone has their own different opinion and everything, but it's some of these experiences, I imagine, are wrapped up in belief. if I believe that I'm supposed to go to hell, that's probably where I'm going to go.
Oh
If I
yeah.
believe,
I
yeah,
deserve to go there.
yeah,
I asked for it. I asked for it. People that refuse to believe in their creator get their wish.
mhm,
They don't want any part of God. That's your choice. And that's a choice you
yeah,
made. That, and
exactly.
everybody knows that there is something. They know that there
Mm,
is, you call it God, call it what you want to call it, but there is something. Everybody knows that. And
yeah,
but it's a belief. Those that just don't believe in anything, I don't know. You have to believe in one way or the other. You either believe or you
yeah,
don't. you
yeah,
know.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. So I'm gonna begin to wind this down. But I'm so curious, when you got the charge or the instruction to bring people to me, what does your life look like today in
oh,
regards to that?
well, I mean, when I came back from that experience, okay, I was working at a car dealership and I was making okay money, but not very much. And Don,
Yeah.
we had just been through bankruptcy, lost everything that we had. We were
Okay.
absolutely devastated. And now we had funeral bills for Mark. We had my hospital bills, Mark's hospital bills. We were probably, billions of dollars in debt, right? And we had lost everything. So at that moment in life, I cried out to God to help us. And I went to bed one night and I had a dream. And this was a dream. There's a difference. And I had this dream that to start this business. And when I woke up, I mean, I learned everything what to do. Yeah. Look, I'm a person that doesn't have a college education. My dad was transferred all over the United States when I was growing up. So we moved from one school to another school. I didn't learn anything in school. They were a different curriculum, different books. I couldn't learn. I wanted to go to college. My parents said, "Oh, you're not college material. Just get married and have kids." Well, I did, and so was not an educated person, and I had this dream to start a business, right? So I got up that morning and I told Don I was so excited. You can't even imagine. And yeah, he's going, yeah, cat, I mean, he's put up with a lot of weird stuff here recently, right? I just went to hell and I came back and all this. Now I want to start a business, right? Well, his dad was a brilliant businessman. So I went to him and, he was so excited about it. And so I started the business. Well, it turned into a multi-million-dollar corporation, and our son runs it today. I retired a few years back and took up golf, and God has blessed us over and over. I can tell you the miracles that happened when we were in the business. Finding an envelope with a $700 check I didn't know. It's just incredible what God has done in our lives, but my main focus certainly has never been on money, although I have spoken to several people on business, and I did a lot of seminars and things with Chevrolet Motor Division, Ford Motor Division, Chrysler, Mercedes, and taught them. And what my business was about? It was about being nice to people. I started the first customer relations business in the United States of America, way before J.D. Powers, early 60s. He started in the 60s as well. But it was our idea that launched him, and he admitted that. I met him at Westwood Village in Los Angeles, and he said, "Do you think I stole your business?" And I said, "No, you didn't steal it." I said, "The idea maybe, but you didn't. You made what you made." But we did very well, and my son is still doing very well today. And so, we've been so mightily blessed. So our life since then, but my focus, my main, besides maybe playing golf once in a while, I am out there for Jesus. And I want nothing more than everybody that I talk to or see or know, they all know what I'm about. And it's that I don't want anybody to go to hell. I mean, my motivation, would you, even your worst enemy? I just can't even imagine. I can't imagine. And I know what's happening. And I see the demons. I see these people being led by
Yeah.
the hate in them, and this getting more and more and more.
Yeah. Kat, I love that, and I wasn't gonna let you go unless you did mention how you were the first person, not just woman, but first person. So I'm glad you brought that out for me, because I think that is, and I applaud you. I think that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So I love your energy. I love the story, and definitely this is a platform where I get Christians as well, or those who are wrestling with their questions. And so being able to hear you and see you, and especially the conviction, the
Uh-huh.
passion in which you speak, will, may help convert some people. Um, Having
So,
said that, I always like to close with like 4 questions that I ask people, and then I'm going to ask you how people can reach you. So, I think I already know the answer is, because I was a Christian minister for almost 20 plus years. But do you have a spiritual practice? And if so, what is it?
a spiritual practice. Well, I go to church. I go to a non-denominational evangelical church,
Okay.
and I do that for myself because I don't know, it just feels good.
Yeah.
It's not that I have to feel like I have to learn anything or do anything. I just, especially during worship time, where I can really feel like I connect with God somehow, and I enjoy that. And sometimes I just go to church on YouTube, But I want to
Yeah.
be with other worshipers. There's something about being in church. So
Yeah.
I do read the Bible. I'm not real good at it, but I
Right.
do. If I've got questions, I'll usually find the answer there. And
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So, Kat, what's the most important thing in life?
Well, for me, it's to bring people to the Lord. That's number one. I mean, that's why I'm alive. There's no
Yeah.
way I should
Yeah.
be alive. I have been under so much X-ray. I had a really bad water ski accident when I was in my 20s. I was a good water skier, and I skied through a slalom course on a single ski, and I could have been going as fast as 80 miles an hour in a real hard turn, and I
Yeah.
fell and I started
Oh,
spiraling
wow.
into the water. Ski stayed on, and I just kept twisting, and my leg literally twisted off at the knee.
Mhm.
It was like the skin was holding it on. That was about it. And
Oh my goodness.
and so when I went into surgery, I from my 20s on, have had a pretty deformed right leg. But I mean, I played tennis on it and ran every day and did all this stuff, and it's still getting me around, but it looks ugly. I've had surgeries on
Right.
it. Bad. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. Last 2 questions. Who is God?
God, who is God? Oh wow. God is a supreme being of a spiritual world. And um, I don't know. With me, I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to explain who is God. God is a being.
Yeah.
If we are made in the image of God. I believe that God is a lot like us, but I think
Yeah.
that He's the supreme being, knows all, feels all,
That works.
does all.
That's good enough. Yeah, that's good enough, Kat. That works. That
He,
works.
he's in control. He's in control, but He lets us. We have this free will, about that, and our free will is what gets us in trouble. But I think God
Yeah.
is there for us if we want Him. If we
Yeah.
want Him.
Yeah. I just a side note before the last question. I think God works that into the plan that we have free will, and okay, this person may go left, but I got something set up on the left that's going to bring them back to the right.
Mhm.
Or they're gonna drop the ball on this, but I got something ready to help pick that ball back up so they can keep going.
Yeah.
So that's how I see the divine God, for myself. That even with our free will and how we can kind of go our own path, there's something there waiting for us that's going to get us back on course. And I think your story, when you talk about I hate God and don't believe in God, and still you ended up here
Yeah.
So that's the biggest evidence to me that, yeah, there's something to that. There's something to that he works that in the plan. So the last question I have for you is, what does the world need more of?
Well, I mean, everybody says love, but what is love? You know, I've loved a lot of things, but I think we need God. You know, we've
Yeah,
taken God out of almost everything in America, and we're seeing the results of that. God
sure.
God is in our lives. It gives us the right way to go. It
Yeah,
gives us the knowledge that we need to succeed. It gives us everything we
yeah,
need. And so when we desert God, or when we turn away from God, we lose that, you know, and we're in trouble.
yeah,
And I believe the United States is in a lot of trouble right now because of that.
yeah,
So I think we need to focus more on our Lord and eternity, and less on our lives here. We
yeah.
need to try to succeed and all, but this is just this is nothing compared to eternity. So what are we working?
Yes,
You know, we're working towards
yes.
getting money or whatever. You know, I you know,
I,
that's the focus is wrong.
I couldn't agree with you more, Kat. I couldn't agree with you more. So you have a book. Tell us a little bit about the book, and then also how, because if this story resonates with someone and they're like, I need to reach out to her, or I need to get the book. Tell us about the book and how people can reach you.
Okay, well, the book is called "Is It Safe to Die?"
Is
and
it safe to die?
yeah, and you can get it on Amazon, and ask my email in there, and how to get a hold of me. And I'd love for any of your listeners, either through you or myself, to
Yeah,
contact me with any questions they have. I'm certainly open to talking to absolutely anybody. So that's my life. That's what I do. So
absolutely. And for those who are watching, that information will be in the description below. So
good.
definitely make sure you get the book. Make sure you reach out to Kat. Let her know that you, even in the comments, that you love the episode or you loved her story or whatever. Just let's give her some love.
No, thank
Um,
you.
and having said that, yeah, that's my platform. My platform is just love, 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 love.
Yeah.
So I just wanna thank you again, Kat. You are such a beautiful soul,
No,
such an
thank you.
amazing, powerful, absolutely, such an amazing, powerful story. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as I say to my listeners, I love you and I appreciate you. And both Kat and I say goodbye for now.
Bye.